In this session, we are going to be speaking with Nathan Ben-Key, Regulatory Compliance Advisor at Cornerstone Credit Union League. And we're here to talk in more detail about customer identification programs, or in credit union worlds, member identification programs. So, if you would, Nathan, please give us a brief review of CIP, or rather what MIPs are all about.
Well, Simon, the customer identification programs are risk-based programs that credit unions use to identify, confirm, and form the reasonable belief that it knows the true identity of each customer. The CIP rules require four main steps. First, a credit union is required to verify the identity of any person wishing to open an account at the credit union. Second, the credit union is required to provide notice that identification is required to open an account, and this notice needs to be reasonably designed to ensure that a person, member, or customer is able to view it or hear it before opening an account. Third, the credit union is required to maintain records of account information, including the information used to open the account, for a period of 5 years. Lastly, the credit union must check information against government watch and block lists to ensure that they are not opening accounts for prohibited parties.
Nathan, will the process vary from credit union to credit union?
Yes, exactly. Each credit union CIP will be different based on its own risk assessment. A few things to consider are the types of accounts offered by the credit union, the credit union's methods of opening accounts, the types of identifying information available, the credit union's size, location, and member base. Each federally insured credit union, at minimum, must provide for an internal system of controls, policies, and procedures to assure ongoing compliance, provide for independent testing for compliance to be conducted by the credit union, personnel, or outside parties, designate an individual responsible for coordinating and monitoring day-to-day compliance, and provide ongoing employee training for appropriate personnel. Federally insured credit unions need to implement a written program approved by the board and reflected in the minutes of the credit union.
Tell me more, so when does a credit union verify the identity of a potential customer?
Prior to account opening, a customer is a person, that is, an individual, corporation, partnership, trust, estate, or any other entity recognized as a legal person who opens a new account. It also includes individuals that open accounts for other individuals that lack legal capacity, or open an account for a non-person entity. Excluded from the definition of customer is anyone that does not receive banking services, such as a person whose loan application is denied. It also excludes those kinds of services that do not create a formal banking relationship, such as check cashing, wire transfers, and the sale of checks or money orders. An account is defined as a formal banking relationship to provide or engage in services, dealings, or other financial transactions, and includes deposit accounts, transaction or asset accounts, credit accounts or credit cards, extensions of credit, safe deposit boxes, cash management, custodian or trust services. Some things that would not be lumped into accounts would include loan participations, check cashing, funds transfer, sale of checks or money orders, the acquisition of accounts from another financial institution, or accounts open to participate in an employee benefit plan established under the ERISA. CIP is not required when the credit union has an existing relationship, or for any beneficiaries or PODs on an account.
Okay, I think I understand that. So if I come in to buy a money order, or if I already have an account at the credit union, I don't need to provide information for CIP purposes?
That's correct.
Nathan, so I'm a credit union employee and I'm opening an account. What am I required to do to get that account open?
Before opening an account, the credit union is required to collect information that allows it to form a reasonable belief that it knows the identity of the customer. At minimum, a credit union needs to obtain 4 things prior to opening an account: a name, date of birth, address, and an identification number. The address needs to be an actual physical address. A P.O. box is not acceptable. When the customer only has a P.O. box, the credit union must get at least a physical address for a relative or alternative contact. The identification number refers to a Social Security number, employer identification number, or taxpayer identification number. For any non-U.S. person, a credit union may obtain a Social Security number from a resident alien, a TIN, or an alien identification number, or a number and country of issuance on any other foreign issued document evidencing nationality or resident and bearing a photograph or similar safeguard. A credit union also needs to collect the 4 pieces of information required from not only the customer, but from any joint account holders or co-borrowers. For an entity, the credit union needs to collect the name of the entity, the principal business address of that business, the taxpayer or employee ID number. After collecting that required information, the credit union must also begin the verification stage. In other words, at account opening or within a reasonable time period after opening the account. The credit union must verify that the person is who he or she says they are. Verification can be accomplished through documentary or non-documentary means. Documentary means are the safest, but really can only be done in person. When we're talking about documents, we mean a government-issued ID that evidences nationality or residency, and that includes a photograph or similar safeguard. Under the CIP rule, credit unions using the documentary method of verification must view at least one primary form of documentary ID, such as a state-issued driver's license, a state-issued ID, or a passport. The form of identification should not be expired and should include a photo, description, and signature, and evidence of nationality. IDCheckingGuide.com gives a great primer on these kinds of ID. For entities, the credit union should require documenting proof of existence, such as a certified Articles of Incorporation, a government-issued business license, a partnership agreement, or a trust instrument. There is no need to keep a copy of each document, but the credit union should record the type of document reviewed. One thing to note, although the CIP rule requires only one form of identification, many credit unions have developed policies that require an additional secondary form of identification. Once you develop such a policy, you must abide by it consistently. For credit unions that do require additional secondary form of identification, such sources may include an insurance card, credit card, a Social Security card, a utility bill, a property tax bill, a voter registration card, a visa, a birth certificate, or a student ID card.
Oh, you also mentioned non-documentary means of verification. What does that actually mean?
Non-documentary refers to relying on something that is not a government-issued ID. Although it says non-documentary, it doesn't mean that the thing used is not a document. This includes employment verification, references from other financial institutions, contacting individuals via phone or mail to any address provided, or online verification. Almost anything that is not government issued but allows the credit union to reasonably believe that it has verified the identity of the customer. Times when the non-documentary method is often used is when opening accounts online, through the mail, or over the internet. Of course, this method is riskier than documentary verification. With any form of identification, documentary or non-documentary, it is important for the credit union to document what kind of information was provided and how the information was verified. A credit union should keep a record of any document that was relied on to verify identity, including the type of document, ID number, place of issuance, and, if any, the date of issuance and expiration date. The method and the results of any measures undertaken to verify identity. The results of any substantive discrepancy discovered when verifying identity.
What if the document presented appears maybe fraudulent, doesn't appear genuine?
Well, the credit union is not required to verify the validity of a document, but if it appears fraudulent on its face, the credit union probably can't form the reasonable belief required under the CIP rules and should file a SAR.
How long does a credit union have to verify the information?
FinCEN's guidance says that a financial institution has a reasonable period of time to verify the information. The definition of reasonable will depend on the risk assessment profile of the credit union. A credit union should also develop procedures to cover when not to open an account, terms under which an account may be used, while verifying ID, when to close an account when ID can't be verified, and when to file a suspicious activity report or SAR.
You said the CIP rules include a notice requirement. Can you tell us about that requirement?
The BSA requires that the credit union provide notice that a verification of identity will take place. For most credit unions, this model language is incorporated into their account agreement. Here's the text of the model notice.
Does the credit union have any other duties regarding customer information?
The credit union needs to have procedures to determine if a member or customer appears on any list of known or suspected terrorists or terrorist organizations. The Office of Financial Asset Control maintains a list, updated regularly, of individuals and entities that U.S. persons are prohibited from doing business with. Any information gathered during the CIP should be checked against this list. FinCEN also has a means by which regulatory and law enforcement authorities can share information regarding potential criminal activity. These requests are known as 314A requests, which require financial institutions to search their records and identify if they have a match with a particular investigative subject. Credit unions should review this list frequently against any new accounts. While the OFAC list is public information, 314A requests are not. 314A requests are confidential, and each credit union must designate one individual to check this list at least every 2 weeks against member records. This individual cannot share that information with other employees. If it finds a match, it must submit a report through the Secure Information Sharing System and wait for a response from FinCEN. FinCEN also encourages credit unions to share information and to identify and report activities that may involve terrorist activity or money laundering. Under 314B of the BSA, financial institutions can receive a safe harbor from civil liability in sharing information by providing FinCEN with notice of its intent to engage in information sharing and that it will maintain adequate procedures to protect the security and confidentiality of the information. This notice is effective for 1 year. The sharing agreement does not allow an institution to share a SAR or intend to file a SAR. The credit union also needs to designate an agent to receive such requests and may limit the amount of information shared.
Nathan, if using an agent to set up the relationship, like an auto dealer or mortgage broker, who is responsible for checking CIP information?
A credit union may depend on a third party, like an auto dealer, to verify information, but ultimately the responsibility lies with the credit union. When depending on another financial institution or affiliate, a credit union needs to make sure that the following criteria are met. First, the relied on financial institution is subject to a rule implementing the AML program requirements of 31 U.S.C. 5318H and is regulated by a federal functional regulator. The customer has an account or is opening an account at the credit union and at another functionally regulated institution. That reliance is reasonable under the circumstances. That the other financial institution that enters into a contract requiring it to certify annually to the credit union that it has implemented its AML program and that it will perform, or its agent will perform, the specified requirements of the credit union's CIP.
So once my credit union finishes verifying the identity of the customer and the account is open, do I have any ongoing obligations at all?
The credit union's CIP needs to also have record keeping and retention requirements. The information required at account opening, name, address, date of birth, TIN, and any other identifying information must be retained for a period of 5 years after the account is closed. For credit cards, the retention period is 5 years after the account closes or becomes dormant. The credit union must also keep a description of the following for 5 years after the record was made. First, any document that was relied on to verify identity, noting the type of document, the identification number, the place of issuance, and if any, the date of issuance and expiration date. The method and the results of any measures undertaken to verify identity. The results of any substantive discrepancy discovered when verifying identity.
Tell me, Nathan, so the credit union needs to retain copies of all these documents?
No. The regulation only requires that a credit union make and maintain a record, such as a description of that information that they receive from a member. This should include all the information from the documents that were relied upon.
If my credit union has operations outside of the US, do those operations have to comply with the CIP as well?
No, but we strongly encourage all branches to comply with CIP rules.
Well then, Nathan, so what if someone is going to open an account for another person? What do I check for CIP purposes? The person opening the account or the person the account is being opened for?
It depends. The customer for CIP purposes is the person opening the account. When a power of attorney is being used to open the account for another competent individual, then you would check the information for that competent individual. If the individual opening the account is doing so for a person that lacks legal capacity, the individual with power of attorney must be checked. The same goes for parents opening an account for children. If a child opens the account, the child must be the one that is verified. If it is a parent on behalf of the child, the credit union would verify the parent.
Now, for a minor, they may not have all the same government-issued IDs, for example. Any tips on how to verify for them?
Sure. Well, in the case of a minor, a credit union could be verified through a driver's license or work permit if they have one, but also through non-documentary methods, such as identification by an existing member, using public databases, or the ID or from a parent or teacher. The credit union CIP policy needs to include what is acceptable under these sorts of circumstances.
Nathan, can a credit union open an account for a person without a Social Security number, for example?
For BSA and CIP purposes, a U.S. person must provide a Social Security number. Non-U.S. persons may provide the number from a foreign government-issued ID, such as a passport.
Are there any entities that are not subject to CIP verification rules at all?
Credit unions and banks are not considered members or customers under the regulation, as are federal, state, and local governments.
What sort of penalties are there for a credit union that violates BSA or anything regarding the CIP?
A non-compliant credit union faces civil penalties of up to $1,000 a day for each day of non-compliance, and up to $500 per violation if it was negligent in any record-keeping or reporting requirements of the BSA. Additional penalties of up to $50,000 are also possible if a credit union engages a pattern of negligent activity. This is, of course, in addition to any sanctions from the NCUA or state regulator.
Finally, Nathan, in review, can you give us a short summary of what a credit union should be doing to ensure it's in complete compliance?
Sure. As a short list, first, is your credit union collecting all 4 pieces of required information: name, address, ID number, and date of birth from all persons applying for membership and any non-member joint account holders or co-borrowers? 2, is your credit union collecting a street address for every potential member, or if the member only has a P.O. box, is it collecting the physical address of a relative or alternative contact? 3, is your credit union maintaining a description or copy of any documentary or non-documentary methods used to verify identity? 4, does your signature card or application for membership include the required notice and have spaces for CIP information? 5, is your credit union maintaining a record for 5 years after account closure, including the resolution of any discrepancies? And 6, can your data processing system capture the required CIP information and verification descriptions? 7, if your government makes a request through the 314A system asking if you can identify a specific account holder by name or ID number, could you locate that information? 8, are you comparing persons against government lists, such as the OFAC list?